fund Planned Parenthood.
Privilege of aborting a child. Satan, he is the author of confusion, and
some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils.
Pretty controversial issue.
Very controversial. It's at all levels. Yes, we're back.
Back again. We're going to discuss a few topics today, but this time we're going to talk about the topic of abortion. Obviously, it's a pretty controversial issue.
Very controversial. It's at all levels.
Yes, and it has stood the test of time because it keeps popping up. It's not something that's technically been resolved. There's a lot on both sides, a lot of room for discussion. And I remember a couple of years ago, I remember it clearly because I kicked over a hornet's nest talking about it on social media, but there was Ireland got the right to have abortions in their country. And I remember the parades in the streets and flags waving, teary-eyed women. It was kind of sick in a.
Yeah, this is a very emotional issue for most people when they discuss it.
Yes. It's upsetting because that, at the other end of the celebration, there are lives being taken away to the tune of thousands, depending on where you are, millions in some countries. But obviously, most recently in France, they just became the first country to actually
place it in their
constitution.
In
yes,
Constitution.
It's a constitutional right to have an abortion now, which is the first of its kind in a fairly large country in France.
And ironically, they're Roman Catholic countries as well, and the Catholic Church do not promote that as their doctrinal stance.
Correct. But somehow it's made its way to the highest ranks, and now it's been codified in law. So I know abortion being a global agenda. What are your thoughts behind the craziness that seems to be going on around the world?
Well, it may on the surface appear crazy, but it's really not. In reality, from a biblical perspective, there's natural and spiritual dynamics for all human behavior. Mm-hmm. And the natural components that we look at legislatively, judiciously, we also look at individual rights. And then we also look at it spiritually. Spiritually, there are powers. The Bible speaks about dominions, spiritual wings in high places that control the affairs of men, that or give them thought processes. The Bible speaks about how that in the last days, even with Christians, some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. Mm-hmm. So what we have here is a spiritual and natural unfolding of end-time events.
Mm. So it's a tug of war that obviously knows no bounds and knows no borders. To me, there's a puppet master behind all of this. His name is Satan. I think that's pretty evident. But obviously, his impact in the world is pretty pronounced. Even in the church, even in places where he should be easily spotted, a lot of people are being deceived.
Don't recognize him,
as you just said. Yep.
Even the book of Daniel speaks about how that Daniel was wrestling with the prince of Persia. He prayed. It took 21 days to get his prayer answered and through. Mm-hmm. These powers control nations, and these nations also groups of nations. The puppeteers, in a sense, using secret organizations and groups they call the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, they're globalists. And their goal is to create a new world order. So they worship Lucifer as God. And as a result of that, they're bidding. He's their spokespersons, both in legislative branch through the United Nations and also local, national, state governments. So it's no strange thing that this should be happening these days. And then at the individual level, like Alabama, recently passed a case concerning that a frozen embryo is a living person. Now, this throws a monkey wrench in the U.S. debate also. When does life begin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, you can look at it from a global perspective. You can look at it locally. You can look at it just in the United States alone. But I think I know we'll get to some of those topics in a short while, but just looking at what's going on in other countries where they're seemingly just now getting the privilege of aborting a child. Some won't even go as far as calling it a child. They just refer to it, by a scientific term to almost dehumanize it, which I know is just another tactic in my mind of Satan, how he seems to year after year, decade after decade, century after century, devalue human life in one way, shape, or form to accomplish his overall agenda, which is trying to usurp the order that God has, to usurp the structure that he has, just to
eradicate humanity.
Yeah, life exists.
The conquering group sets the rules. And since Great Britain and the Roman Catholic Church, through the imperialism, they set the rules using the United Nations as a global legislative body as their front. And the U.S. also is a leader of that particular element because it's located in New York City, using the Rockefellers, like Planned Parenthood. Congress is in their pocket. They refused to defund Planned Parenthood, which started by Margaret Sanger, an individual who was dedicated to the proposition of eradicating minorities' babies.
Yeah.
But many have they taped it, I guess, and they framed it, and they prepared to right now make it palatable for the ignorant masses by repeating lies over and over again. And those lies become tomorrow's prevailing truth. What lies? That is not a person. People regurgitate what they've been told. And so consequently, we have this ongoing tug of war, you stated, going on both in the U.S. and abroad. Even in China, 1972, one child per family. The United States, Roe versus Wade, 1972. There has been an orchestrated effort for all of this to be in coincide with one another. What do you think?
You're saying, ironically, the U.S. and their decision to allow abortions, China and their rulings that limited the number of children you could have in your family.
Eradicating the genocide on female babies, it's been going on now. They just reversed that policy last year.
Yeah.
For 50 years, they have been male strong and female deprived.
Well, I don't think it's a surprise that those, and I didn't know that until today, that both of those came into light at the same time, approximately. But it does make sense because if there's one common designer of destruction, Satan, he is the author of confusion, and confusion takes place all around the world at the same time. And it does set out to accomplish.
And the masses just get caught up in the dynamics of their personal, and they mimic towards them. But in reality, it's a big
They're
picture.
not seeing the big picture.
That's absolutely right.
Right.